Hello and welcome to TAL Radio. Today we have a very special guest with us, Sameer Bhakhri, the co-founder of Mentoria and an accomplished author. After years of success in the corporate world, Sameer decided to shift gears and now dedicates his expertise as a pro bono marketing consultant for non-profit organizations. With Mentoria, he is committed to creating impactful social change across the country. His mission is to ensure that every individual can find happiness, productivity, and success in whatever path they choose. Let's get to know a bit more about him and about his inspiring journey. So, we wish you a warm welcome. Thank you for coming to this platform and sharing your thoughts and your journey.
A pleasure, Pavithra. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And start by a very, very cliched question. That is, you had a very successful corporate career. And it was probably during the peak of your corporate career that you decided to shift gears and thought that, okay, I need to go into the social impact sector and do something which would be useful for the people around you. And what was that one particular instance that prompted you to shift gears?
Well, I think as human beings, we always have this innate desire to help those who are lesser fortunate than us. My journey was no different as I started getting a bit of discretionary savings. I started doing whatever I could. So we typically start with supporting the education of a child, and then 2, and then 4, and then 8. But life took a very unexpected turn for me in my corporate career. I've been a salesman all my life, still am. But things changed around 2007-8 when the MD called me and they said, "We want you to take over the HR division of the company." Now, for a salesperson to take over HR, of which I had no clue, was a completely different world and challenge to me. So obviously I asked what had been the ingredients of the morning breakfast and early dinner that prompted the MD to ask me such a question also. But in any case, given the rationale that was explained to me, I took on that responsibility. It was during that time that we also started our CSR journey. And I took the lead in one of the CSR initiatives of getting people to contribute a bit of their monthly salaries towards a cause that they thought they ought to support. It was during the launch of this initiative that I started realizing how blind I had been all my life, that you're focused on your corporate career and your next title and your next promotion and your next achievement and so on and so forth, and you and your family, and you're completely oblivious to the world around you. You think you're doing your bit by signing a check for the education of 1 child, 2 child, but you have no clue where that money is going or what's really happening to the education levels. It was during the promotion of this initiative that I guess the world opened up to me, and I started realizing that there were millions and millions of underprivileged and lesser fortunate individuals. While that initiative was a grand success, it opened my eyes to such an extent that I couldn't sleep then. And I said, I've been living an extremely selfish life. I've been very fortunate all these years. But is this how I want to carry on? Yes, I'm at the peak of my career. The career graph looks like it's going to keep on going up. But can you really sleep if you have so many millions of lesser fortunate people and you're doing nothing about it? Or a tiny fraction? That, I guess, was the change for me when I decided that the rest of my life I would try and share a bit of my good fortune with those who've been lesser fortunate. So I quit the corporate sector in 2010, and I've been in the social sector since then.
That's a wonderful journey. And while we are talking about social sector, what you have engaged yourself with is specifically providing pro bono marketing consultation to nonprofits. So what inspired this specific decision?
Several things. One, immediately after I quit the corporate sector, I joined an NGO, worked there for about a year and a half, understood how a nonprofit functions, what the ecosystem is, what the environment is, what the challenges are that are faced by nonprofits. Took a break for personal reasons for about 4 months, and then joined a management institute which does phenomenal work in the social space. Worked there for about 6 months, and the nagging feeling was the impact was always indirect. I couldn't see the impact of the effort or the time that I was putting in. So in 2012, I decided to make this big jump and experiment and say, let me try and put out my own shingle and offer consulting myself, so I know precisely firsthand what the issues are, challenges are, and what am I able to do about it,
Yeah.
and see the impact myself. And given that non-profits are non-profits, I knew that I couldn't bear to charge them anything for my time or efforts. And life has been kind. I didn't need uh, money from the non-profit sector. So since June 2012, I've been providing pro bono services.
Wonderful. Would you like to share some stories that has happened through your journey as a marketing consultant to not non-profits from 2012 to 2024?
Oh, lots. Uh, Primarily, all the people that I've worked with, you'll find uh, are balding rapidly, have crow's feet below their eyes, and so I torture them a lot, everyone that I work with. Essentially, because of a realization very early on in life that
Mm-hmm.
nobody needs advice.
Hmm.
We just need validation of our thoughts. So,
Hmm.
if the advice matches with our thoughts, the person is a good advisor. If the thoughts or the advice doesn't match, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, he's an idiot, and so on and so forth. So, right from the beginning of my consulting journey, realizing this truth,
Hmm.
I do not offer any solutions to the nonprofits that I work with. I torture them to come out with the solutions themselves. Because my realization is that unless these come from their hearts and minds, they will never be implemented. So you can get a consultant to tell you, the 10 best things to do to grow your business or become sustainable. None of them will get acted upon because the team hasn't come out with them.
Hmm.
So there's no ownership. So my first task with every nonprofit is how do you get them to own their own nonprofit and thereby come out with, I mean, it's not rocket science, right?
Hmm.
Human beings are capable of thinking by themselves. They just are lazy. We don't want to think. We want somebody to think for
Think
us
for
and
us.
give us, that spoon feed. I don't do that. So
Hmm.
most of my experiences with founders has been there tearing their hair and saying, we give up, you tell us what to do, and I just refuse. But years on, then when you meet them and they say, what a fabulous time we had because now we have grown from here to here, or we are doing this, or we are doing that. So, for example, for one nonprofit, I spent 8 sessions in helping them define their vision statement. And so they tell me now that that vision statement has turned out to be such a powerful motivator for us and our stakeholders that is guiding us leaps and bounds in our journey. That earlier we just thought it's nonsense, what's in a vision statement? It's just corporate jargon and things like that. Too many stories. It's been a dozen years. So, but this is one that you'll find that anyone associated with me will have lesser hair, more wrinkles, and aged
And
much before they were supposed to.
I really like the fact that you call yourself a salesman, and I'm not sure whether this is the best sales pitch, but it was a wonderful description. Another fact that I really found interesting in your journey is, of course, Mentoria. And despite being a little more than 30 years of age, I have always, throughout my academic journey, I have always struggled to find Like, where do I fit in? Is a question that I like you said, it's not very in the Indian education system. We are rarely taught to think and question and figure out what we want to do in our lives. And this has been quite true, I think, until recent times when, especially the Gen Z is discovering what they want quite early in life because of the access of information they have, and an ingrained sort of rebelliousness that they have been born with, fortunate enough to be born with. So I see that your vision of home mentoria is to so that everyone can carve a path for themselves early on in their life. And how has that journey been for you?
Very interesting and very traumatizing, because you realize that even till date, except for very tiny fractions of the urban elite, at least 95 to 96% of children are hammered, as we call them, round pegs into square holes. It hasn't changed. So, yes, Gen Z, millennials, and so on and so forth have their own thoughts. But if you look at it from an environment of scarcity of information and scarcity of resources, this generation is the first one that is growing up in an environment of abundance and an overload of information, which comes with its own issues. So, to give you an example, at this point of time, there are 12,000 career opportunities available in the world. Now, parents tend to be the guiding light for children in their formative years. Parents cannot know all 12,000 careers. Parents cannot know what the core interests of a child are. So parents operate from when they were children, the kind of careers that were the respected ones or the ones that gave financial security. And they might know a little bit about how the world is changing, but in-depth knowledge is missing. So typically, parents tend to force children into careers that they thought at that point of time, a quarter century ago, were the ones that would give my child financial security. So engineering, medicine, uh, chartered accounting are still, even after 40, 50 years, the go-to careers. I was once interviewing someone in Pune for a job, and before the interview began, the gentleman said, I want to join Mentoria. I said, yes, that's what this interview is for. Let's get to know each other. He said, no, sir, I've decided I want to join. He was a branch manager of a test prep institute, a fairly well-known test prep institute. I said, okay, tell me what's the issue. He said, for the past 4 years as branch manager, it is my responsibility to interview students and ask them, what are your interests? Why are you taking up engineering? And so on and so forth. He said, I would have interviewed about 4 lakh students in these 4 years. Can you guess how many of them responded to this question, why are you taking up engineering, with the answer, because I love science. I want to be an
Zero.
engineer. 4 times more than that.
Okay.
So he said the situation is so bad that over 99% had one response to this question. My daddy wants me to. So if you look at it, we are looking at the world's largest, youngest working population in our country being driven in the wrong directions, will therefore live highly miserable lives, suboptimal lives, simply because from childhood, or say from class 8, they were put into a different direction than what they're meant for. So at Mentoria, we're trying to change that. We're trying to see if we can handhold these children from the 8th standard onwards, apply psychometrics. We have the most reliable psychometric assessment available in the country today, and get them and their parents to understand what are the career options that these children will enjoy. Because the fundamental fact is, if you enjoy something, you'll excel in it. That's Mentoria's mission. And it's a mammoth task, because till today, with whatever resources are still available, changing mindsets of the resource providers, that is the parents, it's going to take a generation. So we are in it for the long haul, but we don't want to see this country's future messed up as badly as it has been, because everybody talks about India's demographic dividend. That, just demographics, young population, working population is going to take this country far ahead.
Forward.
But it could be a demographic disaster if vast millions of these children don't get skilled or educated and take the path that they're on, and thereby ultimately cause civil unrest. So that's our mission.
Yeah, it's so relatable because I also took up engineering because of a lot of exactly what you said regarding parents having not much clue on what's going on in the world and what their child could be better at doing. So yes, those were like 4 miserable years of my life, and, but I did gain a bit of a resilience through it. But I'm glad that there are spaces like Mentoria where you can go and find what you're good at a very young age. I would also like to ask, like, if you were to make a career switch at some point of time, does Mentoria kind of guide individuals who would like to make a career switch if they're in their 30s or 40s?
We did actually, we found within 6 months of our launching our website,
Mhm.
the initial plan was to focus on 8 to 12 standard children. We realized that 66% of the traffic on our website was from 28 plus. So we spent 6 months developing a psychometric assessment for that age group. And now that's a substantial proportion of our package
Mhm.
of the hand-holding and the career counseling and the knowledge gateway that we offer working professions. It's a much, much more acute problem there.
And regarding successful career switch, do you have some journeys that you would like to share?
It's a little too early to share uh, successful switches, but I mean, there are at least several dozen of these people who have come back to us after a year or year and a half saying, I'm so glad that I did this. The whole world was against it. My family, my friends said, don't take that risk. I mean, you start from zero. But the kind of happiness I'm getting in my job now, none of that pain of, sacrificing a year or two. Because, Pavithra, one of the things that we tell working individuals or students is, what is your lifespan? You're 30 years old. You've got at least 45 more years ahead of you. So rather than look at the past 5 years, would you rather look at the next 30 that you're going to spend and spend them happily? That kind of clicks because we're all emotional human beings, right? We try to disguise our emotions with logic, but at the core, all our decisions are emotional.
Yeah.
So if you connect with individuals and show them a long-term perspective, they get it.
That's a wonderful thing to share, and that's I think a lot of people would like to maybe think about it a bit more, because like you said, ours is a generation which has been forced to take up professional courses because we wanted to settle sooner and get ahead with life. And perhaps amidst all that, we have found it very difficult to kind of, find or figure out what the self actualization part never happened for most people in my generation. And it's wonderful that kids of this age and even 28 plus people are trying to figure out, even, even if it's not a societally acceptable thing to, restart your career. And it's like the person had individual has said, the whole world is against you, but it's very necessary for you to be in tune with yourself to lead the next 45 years of life in those terms. I'd come across a very interesting review of your book, which is intriguingly titled Ramblings of a Megalomaniac Consumed with Cynicism and Hubris. It's quite a long title. And this particular review mentioned how the book unravels the formula behind unhappiness, and that to thread by thread. So I would love to know a little more about your book. And I've seen that it's interesting how you're using negative hooks for selling your things. It's a very repetitive pattern through this conversation. That's what I've learned.
I guess that's a style that I developed. Whatever works for you is what you build on, right?
Yeah, yeah.
After I quit the corporate sector, a lot of my colleagues, friends, teammates, etc., said you must write
Mm-hmm.
because you've taught us quite a bit. We've learned from you. More people should. So I embarked on this writing journey by starting a blog. So I would write a few articles here and there, share my experiences and things. And at one point of time, a friend called up and said, "You must turn all of this into a book." And I said, "Are you nuts? Nobody reads books these days.
Mm-hmm.
And there are like millions of self help books, and nothing changes in the world. So the authors probably make some money, but there is no impact on the reader because change is difficult." So, well, I was relentlessly pursued to do this, and I wrote a mammoth 7 pages of words. And I thought, that's it, whatever I've learned in life. And I sent it to a few friends. So they said, "This is fantastic. You have to make this into a book." I said, "Yeah, so this is it, 7 pages." They said, "Are you nuts? You can't have a book of 7 pages. This is not a bullet point presentation that you're making in the corporate sector. Elaborate, tell some stories. How did this come about?" And so on. That kind of started me off. And they were, this whole myth about the greater good, you have to sacrifice for the greater good. So the thing was, people who worked with you have learned so much. Why not the rest of the world? So that's where the megalomaniac comes in, of believing that you can, beyond your family and friends, have an impact. So I built on it. And as I was writing, I started realizing that, we tend to destroy our world ourselves. Nobody else does it. Because life, if you trace it back, is all about the choices that you made. Some very early on would be what your parents or other people made for you. But after you became an adult, all the choices were yours. And so I started thinking about how do we screw up our own lives. So the first half of the book is precisely that.
Yeah.
Why we screw up our lives, what are the kind of pressures or other things that force us to make our own lives miserable. And the second hour of the book is how I changed things and now living a life of meaning and happiness by not falling into those traps and hoping that if people can identify and recognize that, yes, this is an issue with me and I can come out of it, it's possible that I might be able to help a couple of people if they were to implement something like this. We spoke about societal pressures. So one of my core messages in the book is about how unfortunately we are all, at least those born in India to Hindu parents, afflicted by a brain virus, which we've got from our 4 or 5 or 6 fathers. I don't know how many fathers our ancestors ago were. And that impacts each and every thought and each and every word and each and every action of ours.
Yeah. Yeah.
This brain virus is called LKK. Have you heard about it?
Oh, no.
You haven't heard. So there was this gentleman called Ram in Indian mythology, and he was banished and he had to go and live in the jungles, and someone abducted his wife. And the guy says, "What nonsense. Flying chariots in those times. Amazing, right?" So he decides to go and get his wife back. And he had to cross the ocean. And then he flew back. Must have got an upgrade, Lufthansa or Air India, Lankan Airlines. Problem is, during those journeys, he got afflicted by a brain virus. And when he came back, many of his decisions were truly obnoxious.
Yes.
It is from
Interesting.
those, so we are all children of apparently that gentleman. And so the full form of this virus that afflicted him and therefore has been passed on through our genes over generations, LKK, the medical terminology accepted worldwide now, is Log Kya Kahenge.
Okay.
So it's one of the ways in which we destroy our lives. And we've been, this brain virus has been introduced to us by our parents, to us, their parents to them. So everything that you do in life has to first go through this filter of LKK. We don't know who these log are. We don't know why they have an interest in us. We don't know whether they're going to be tending to us when we are sick and dying, but they are a force. So everything that a Hindu human being does is first filtered through LKK. Now, if you recognize this disease, there's a way that you can overcome it.
Yeah.
But we just take it for granted. And even till date, irrespective of your age, whether you're going out, whether you're trying a new initiative, you're doing this, if it goes against the set norms of society, the first question people will ask you is LKK.
Yeah.
So the book is filled with basically my personal life learnings, and I've tried to share that in the hope that people identify, recognize how they screw up their own lives, and that there are solutions. So it's very light-hearted, and yes, the title is meant to deter people from buying, because initially my thought was that half a dozen friends and half a dozen family members would buy it only. It's done a little better than that, but so the hope was that people say this is above my understanding, and how much do I need to Google and translate and so on and so forth. But apparently people are quite resilient.
That's a really interesting story, and I love the LKK part, and that has been a very big guiding principle for me in my late teens and early 20s. I do very much regret that, and it has been quite liberating to come out of it when this I have moved away from the said log, and so that I can think for myself and take decisions for myself. And so I would like to conclude this interview by asking just one question. What is that one single advice that you want people to follow?
Believe in yourself. If you look at anyone who has succeeded in any sphere in any century, it has just boiled down to this one thing. If you believe in yourself, if you accept yourself as who you are, how you are, if you believe in your thoughts and ideas, you can change the world. It doesn't have to be 8 billion people. You can just have an impact on 8, 80, 800. But the problem is we don't have enough confidence in ourselves. We stumble at the first obstacle. We start questioning ourselves and our competency and our capabilities at the first hurdle. So one of the things that I tell the youth a lot of times and through workshops and everything else is, can you move out of this perception that if something that you tried didn't work, it is you who failed? Rather, can we all try and be like Edison, who kept on experimenting and experimenting and experimenting, who knows how many hundreds of times till he got that light to move from one point to the other and change the world simply because he thought he could. So, if we can all look at life as a series of experiments, you take away that negativity of failure on yourself and say, my experiment failed. Unfortunately, we've been taught to feel that if you make a mistake, you have failed, which then undermines our self confidence even more, which results in our not wanting to make mistakes, which results in our not wanting to take risks, not experiment, and just follow paths that seem to be, safe. So, which is why you have one Elon Musk and not millions, right? Because generations of us have been told making a mistake is wrong. Failure is not acceptable. It's a highly competitive 1.4 billion people all clawing for resources. You need to rise up. There is no space for making mistakes. So that crushes our self belief every time that we think that if something didn't work out, we failed. So if the youth can have this strong sense of self-belief and keep plowing on and keep experimenting and keep taking risks, they'll ultimately find their path to
Yeah.
happiness.
Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. There is so much of things that we can think about, and and I'm pretty sure that people who would have wanted to have a change in their life regarding following their what they are truly passionate about, I'm pretty sure that there will be a lot of people reaching out to you soon through the interview. And thank you once again for this conversation. This is something I would really remember as I go ahead in life, and so thank you once again.
Pleasure, Pavitra. Thank you so much for having me.
And that was our interview with Sameer Bhakhri, who is a co founder of Mentoria and is also a pro bono consultant for nonprofits. And he has been sharing his inspiring journey, and I hope the listeners are inspired through his stories. Wish you a great day, and until next time, this is Pavithra signing off.